giving him a shout out. John Siggety, one of our featured writers, he had a post on LinkedIn which I thought he was spot on. Do you guys watch The Office, John, Justin?
Yeah.
You know the Michael Scott Paper Company?
Yes, I do.
So Michael Scott Paper Company, that episode, it's a pretty interesting comparison. Michael Scott Paper Company is about to go out of business. They're getting very predatory with their pricing. They're all the way down. And you have the people over at Dunder Mifflin, and they're like, how is Michael Scott affording to like with these like bargain bin prices? How can the company actually exist? Like how can this be a profitable endeavor? And just as Michael Scott's having this realization, we're about to go out of business. Guess who calls? Dunder Mifflin and like, hey, we're going to buy you Michael Scott Paper Company. It gives them kind of this lifeline. From my vantage point, watching what was going on with Liv, I'm like, Liv's kind of in trouble here, right? They're paying these guys exorbitant amounts of money. This cannot be a profitable endeavor. The ratings aren't doing well. John, something that you tweeted about, you and I discussed in a previous episode, right? We're on the verge of depositions here when some of the Saudi officials are going to have to provide deposition testimony, which they definitely didn't want to do. Certainly, I think they probably have more to hide than the PGA Tour, which is an entity that we're aware of. We know what the PGA is about. I don't know if we know what the Saudi Public Investment Fund invests in. In my vantage point, I'm like, I think PGA seems to be pretty good here. I think they just wait the Saudis out and they'll be pretty good in this case. John, did this take you by surprise? Don't they have a lot of leverage in the settlement? Like my brain is still spinning with all this.
To your point about the Michael Scott Paper Company, I think it is similar to that. Liv was in trouble. I think the only difference is that the Public Investment Fund truly has unlimited cash. So I don't think they cared about just bleeding money for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I don't know that it necessarily mattered to them, but yeah, the Public Investment Fund, at least in the handful of small details that we have, they are the exclusive financial investor in this new entity. Obviously, the PGA Tour is going to contribute all of their media rights. So PIF is going to be a minority investor in this new entity, whereas the PGA Tour will be a majority. PGA Tour will also be able to appoint a majority of the board. So the tour is still going to have a ton of influence, and I think they'll probably have the majority of saying power. But I think PIF is basically going to be funding it. So PIF gets a little the best of both worlds here. They get involved in the world of professional golf. I don't know that Live Golf ever actually mattered to PIF, more so than just they wanted to be involved in the sport, and I think this has done that for them. So.
Yeah, you had mentioned about the litigation and how it was brought on sort of an anti-competitive nature, with Liv even accusing the PGA of being this monopoly that had control over the world of golf. And now there's this giant merger between, it seems, all the different leagues. How is this going to be better in sort of that frame of, oh, golf was under a monopoly than what it was before when you had the PGA, Live, DP, you had all these groups, now they're all under one umbrella. Why is this better as a monopoly?
So from an antitrust perspective, I think they're just opening up a whole new can of worms here, because it doesn't make a ton of sense to file a lawsuit and claim that an entity is acting as a monopoly and they are anti-competitive, and then merge into that entity to create an even bigger anti-competitive.
Isn't that the most obvious thing here? Like how is that possible?
It just doesn't make a ton of sense. So I don't know that this is going to be like, rubber stamped by the Department of Justice, to say the least. The PGA Tour is already under an antitrust probe. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me on that front. I think that they may have just opened up a whole new antitrust investigation, and it's even more problems for themselves. So it might eliminate the concerns that they have about discovery and depositions and opening up their books in the short term, but it may have just led to a whole new issue for them in the long term.